Hello friends, welcome to this discussion. So we are continuing our series on skilling through PYQs. All right. So what we will be basically doing is what we have been doing is we have been using different topics and their PYQs to understand what UPSC intends you to know and how a particular question from a particular topic has to be solved. So for that purpose, now we are today using the topic or utilizing the topic of union executives. If you take into consideration previous year's question on union executives, so they have become sort of favorites of UPSC in the last 5 years, and questions on executives, whether be it union executives or state executives, questions have been asked consistently. I am taking up the topic of union executives because most of the times the questions are oriented towards union executives. State executives, that is governor के बारे में एक आध question, one of question has been asked, but more dominance is of union executives. So we'll look into this particular topic, we'll look into what has to be studied in this topic and the types of questions that are asked. That means what UPSC needs you to know, that we will look into. Chalo, let us look first and foremost at what UPSC wants you to know from union executives. First and foremost, UPSC wants you to know the types of union executives. So types may obviously in India, because India is a parliamentary system, there are two types of union executives. One is real and other is nominal. Alright, so UPSC wants you to know which union executive is which type of union executive. For example, President is nominal union executive, while Prime Minister is the real union executive. Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, they are real union executives. The type of union executives have to be known. Second, the mode of their election or the mode of their appointment. How a particular person enters into the office of a union executive. For example, what method is adopted? What method is adopted for electing the President of India, or what method is adopted for a person to become Prime Minister of India, or on what basis basically a person is appointed Attorney General of India. Okay, that has to be known, and most of the questions now basically appear from this arena: appointments or elections. Okay, appointment or elections. How a person is appointed as Prime Minister of India, or how a person gets elected as President of India, or Vice President of India, how a person is elected to. So appointment or elections to an office becomes important point of discussion, and it also becomes an important point on the basis of which questions are being asked. Look, with respect to this aspect, now be very specific. All right, we'll look into it when we go through questions. Now we'll look into it. Powers of the office. All right, powers of the office are to be known. What powers does President of India have? What powers does Prime Minister have? Also, what powers does other union executives have? For example, Attorney General of India. Okay, and in what scenario those powers could be used? That has to be taken into consideration. Limitations of office. What a particular union executive cannot do. All right, what powers cannot be exercised by a union executive? For example, President of India cannot use absolute veto with respect to money bill. So that is limitation of his office, not being able to use absolute veto in terms of money bill. It also becomes very important. Powers are important, but UPSC also tends to ask you what a constitutional executive office cannot do. Relations with other offices. For example, relation between President of India and Prime Minister of India. Relation between Prime Minister of India and his Council of Ministers. All right, relation between Prime Minister of India and Council of Ministers, how they coordinate their work, that has to be looked into. Also, you cannot limit yourself to relation between executive offices. Relation between Prime Minister and Parliament also becomes important. Relation between President and Supreme Court also becomes very important. So you have to look at the office in that manner. So basically what I am saying is you have to look at a particular executive office in a holistic manner. What specific points need to be covered? We'll see them while we go through the PYQs. And then leaving the office. That means how a person who is holding a particular executive office, how he can be removed from office or how he can remit his office. Okay. how he can remit his office. Most appropriate example here will be the way in which a person may lose the office of prime minister, all right, or the method through which president might be impeached. These two are basically the most appropriate examples. Now let us look at the previous year's questions. Chalo dekhte hain. The first question is with respect to election of the president. All right, election of the president, and let me tell you, even if you look at questions before, you can say before the last 5 years, what you will notice is when the question is asked with respect to president, now question is either asked on election of the president or the powers of the president. So when you are going through the chapter of president, pay extra attention to the presidential powers and basically to the role of president, to the presidential powers and the election of president. All right, so let us look at this election. Let us basically look at this question. Consider the following. If the election of president is declared to be void by the Supreme Court of India, all acts done by him/her in performance of duties of his/her office of president before that date of decision become invalid. This particular statement is wrong. This particular statement is absolutely wrong, because constitution itself states very clearly, if election of a person as president is declared invalid, to act done by him from his election till the date of such declaration cannot be considered to be void. Why? Because it will give clarity. Once a person becomes president and he signs on a particular policy, makes a particular decision, then that decision is implemented in the country. And any decision that is implemented by such authority, I mean president is the highest authority of the country. All right. So once the decision is implemented by the highest authority of the land, there should be clarity with respect to continuity of this particular decision. Otherwise, there will be an administrative and governance chaos. So constitutionally also this particular statement is incorrect. And second thing is, you have to consider logic also. You have to basically consider logic also. All right. So if a particular decision is signed by the president and if people are under fear, maybe this decision will be declared invalid, then that decision basically will have no sense. It will not have any value. First statement therefore is incorrect. Second statement, elections for the post of President of India can be postponed on the grounds that some legislative assemblies have been dissolved or elections are yet to take place. Absolutely not. This is something again that is mentioned in the constitution itself. Election of the president once they are declared, election of the presidents once they are declared, it cannot be postponed on the grounds that a particular assembly is dissolved. If a particular assembly is dissolved, then it is dissolved. MLAs of that particular state will not be able to vote. That may be unfortunate, but it is not allowed. Postponement of election on the basis of that is not allowed. Second thing, election of the president has to take place before the incumbent president's term get over. It is only in extraordinary situations that the election can be postponed. Even there, the constitution specifically mentions the postponement cannot happen on this ground. That is, some legislative assembly has been dissolved. All right, some legislative assembly has been dissolved. If that is the case, somewhere, in India has so many states. Somewhere in India, there will be issues with respect to legislative assemblies. There will be issues with respect to dissolution of legislative assemblies. All right, for that, election of president cannot be postponed. Remember, election of president of India basically is the symbol of India. All right, and the constitution basically makes it very clear. What it makes very clear? That India shall have president. All right, India shall have president, and therefore election of the president becomes so much important. Therefore election of the president basically becomes so much important. Third statement, when a bill is presented to the president of India, the constitution prescribes time limit within which she has to declare his or her assent. Again, very wrong statement. President of India has pocket veto. Pocket veto matlab he keeps the bill on table and does not take any action on it. Neither he accepts the bill nor he rejects the bill. All right. The constitution basically does not provide any time limit. In fact, that is why it is said that the pocket of Indian president is bigger than the pocket of American president, because American president, once he receives the bill, he has to give assent within 10 days. If he does not give assent, it is considered that the assent is given. All right. So from this question, what we notice, very minute points with respect to the office of president has been asked. It does not mean that you have to consume all the information. You have to consume information with respect to, you have to basically know information with respect to his elections, the method by which the election is conducted. Also, in what ways president basically uses his powers and what powers are available to him. As I told you, now these are the only two important facets on which questions are asked by UPSC when it comes to the president. All right, let us now go to the next question. This question is again something now which I think you should all go through, because इसमें ना एक very important principle you will understand. I'll tell you how. Consider the following statements. First statement: the Constitution of India classifies ministers into 4 ranks: cabinet minister, minister of state with independent charge, minister of state, and deputy minister. Now remember, Constitution does not give nomenclature. Constitution only has 2 terms: Union Council of Ministers and Cabinet. The term cabinet is only used in the article 352 which relates to national emergency. Okay. Constitution itself does not talk about so many divisions of ministers. Constitution knows only 2 types of minister. One is the Council of Ministers itself, Council of Ministers itself, and second is cabinet. All right. The other 2 terms, minister of state with independent charge, or even the third one, deputy minister, it is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. It is basically nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. In such questions, what will happen is students will attempt and mark this particular statement as the correct statement. Why? Because of overthinking. Remember one thing, in prelims examination, in those 2 hours, what you remember to have been read is the only information that is correct. Any information other than that is basically incorrect. If you are able to recollect the second statement, and if you are able to recollect that yes, this is written in the Constitution, this I have read, and if you are not able to recollect, if you are not basically able to recollect the first statement written anywhere, then that statement is not correct. This differentiation is based on administrative purpose. It is done by President of India, not the Constitution. President of India is allowed to take steps through which efficiency of administration will be increased. So President of India basically has made this differentiation, not the Constitution. All right. You must have not read anywhere that the differentiation of different types of ministers, that the differentiation of the types of ministers is provided by the Constitution. If you are not able to remember it, obviously that statement is not the correct statement, my dear friends. Okay, what you have not read is incorrect. For prelims examination, that certainty you have to develop. Second statement, the total number of ministers in union government, including the prime minister, shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of Lok Sabha. This statement is correct, and this provision was added to the Constitution through one of the constitutional amendments. So you have to tell me in the comment section which was the constitutional amendment. Also remember, my dear friends, question on this particular constitution amendment has been asked a number of times. It has been asked a number of times. So which is the correct answer here? B only 2. B only 2. Moving on now to another of president's powers in which UPSC is interested. देखो, powers में भी ना, if you take into consideration, I said 2 provisions UPSC is interested with respect to president. One is power, other is election. With respect to President of India, there are 2 provisions in which UPSC is interested. One is the powers and other is election. Alright. In powers, there are again 2 provisions in which UPSC is extraordinarily interested. First is veto power of the president. Veto power of the president. There UPSC is interested a lot. Alright. And second is powers with respect to emergencies, especially state emergency. Why? Because somewhere in India there will always be a state जिसमें state emergency or president's rule has been applied. All right, so it is in current affairs. All right, to read this particular provision 356 state emergency or president's rule very carefully. Let us look at it. Let us look at this particular question. Which of the following are not necessarily the consequences? Are not necessary the consequences of proclamation of president's rule in a state. Matlab, if the president's rule is applied, then which of them may not compulsorily happen? It may happen, but not compulsorily. All right. First, dissolution of state assembly. Dissolution of state assembly, not necessary. Which of the following are not necessarily the consequences of the proclamation of president's rule in the state? ठीक है. Dissolution of state legislative assembly. Dissolution of state legislative assembly may not compulsorily happen. What happens according to SR Bommai cases? There is something called as suspended animation. So what may happen is suspended animation may happen. ठीक है. That means member of legislative assembly may not be able to perform, will not be able to perform their duties. ठीक है. Law making process of the state will be done by center. All right. But dissolution of assembly may not happen. What may happen is after some days the president's rule might be taken back and the legislative assembly will perform its role as before. So dissolution of Vidhan Sabha is not compulsory under state emergency. In fact, SR Bommai case mein Supreme Court said at the first instant don't dissolve the assembly. What you do is first suspend the assembly. Try to solve the problem because of which state emergency has been declared. If the problem cannot be solved, only then dissolve the state assembly. All right. Second statement, removal of council of minister of the state. This definitely will happen. State emergency का first effect is the first effect of state emergency is the council of ministers will be replaced. Council of ministers will be dismissed, and it will be the governor who will basically carry out the executive functions according to the directions given by the central government. State emergency का मतलब, the meaning of state emergency is removal of chief minister and his council of ministers. All right. So second will basically happen. First will not necessarily happen. Second will happen compulsorily. Dissolution of local bodies, इसका तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं है. ठीक है. Dissolution of local bodies and state emergencies, there is no relation between them. So first and third, they will not compulsorily happen. Hence our answer will be B. Our answer basically will be B. Moving on to the next question, guys. Now this is with respect to cabinet. Now cabinet again, it is part of union executive, hence I am taking this question. Now remember, with respect to cabinet, with respect to parliamentary system, UPSC has consistently been asking the question. Alright, and in both this question the answer always is the same. And what is it? The responsibility of executive towards Lok Sabha. They will ask you the meaning of parliamentary form of government or cabinet form of government. Meaning of it is same. And what is the meaning? Executives are responsible to the lower house, executives are responsible to the Lok Sabha. यही आंसर होता है, यही आंसर रहा है, यही आंसर होगा. All right. And they have been asking this question in the last 10 years for 5 to 6 times. They have been asking this question in the last 10 years. They have asked this question in the last 10 years for 5 to 6 times. All right. तो focus on it. एकदम simply जाके उधर आंसर देना है. The crux of this question is also the same. Okay. What does this question talk about? Out of the following statements, choose the one that brings out the principle underlying cabinet form of government. All right. Cabinet form of government is same as parliamentary form. There is minor difference, but for general studies, that difference you can just waive out. All right. Cabinet form of government basically works on the principle of collective responsibility, which basically means that the council of ministers will swim and sing together. This in turn means two more things. That first thing is ministers will stand by each other even if they do not agree with each other outside the meeting of the ministry. So if I am a minister and if I don't agree with the cabinet's decision, Inside the meeting of cabinet, I may disagree, but outside the meeting, I will stand by the cabinet. I will stand by the cabinet. Alright, second thing, whenever there will be no confidence motion, it will be against the whole ministry. And if the motion is passed, then the whole ministry will have to resign. The whole ministry will resign or the president will dismiss the ministry. That is collective responsibility. So cabinet form of government works on the basis of collective responsibility, which is our third option. All right. Which is basically our third option. One more, option C. One more thing, because the question has been revolving around the term collective responsibility. Now, I want you to go through your books and identify two more types of responsibilities, that is individual responsibility and legal responsibility. And I want you to come and comment with respect to what is individual responsibility and what is legal responsibility. Also comment, is legal responsibility part of cabinet system in India? Alright, that is your homework. Know what is individual responsibility and know what is basically legal responsibility. Chalo. Now let us move on to the next question. This question is about the office of the Prime Minister of India. Alright. Consider the following statements. First statement. Executive powers of Union of India is vested in the Prime Minister. No, it is not vested in the Prime Minister. It is vested in the President of India. Alright. It is an easy question basically, but this shows limitation of the office of a particular executive. Second statement. The Prime Minister is ex officio chairperson of the Civil Services Board. Again, no. The ex officio chairperson of Civil Services Board is the Cabinet Secretary of India, not the Prime Minister of India. Alright. So both these statements are not correct. They show the limitations to the office of Prime Minister, and hence it is also important for you to know what those limitations are. When I say you should remember what those limitations are, if you remember the rule that has been provided to you in the book, you will easily remember the limitations. Whatever is not the rule, that basically is the limitation. Don't overthink. UPSC does not want you to read extraordinarily specific and focused subject material. UPSC knows what you are reading and it will ask question on the basis of what you are reading. So focus on that, and when you recall while solving the papers, while solving the test or the examination, when you recall, if you are not able to remember any such statement, that means that statement is not correct. That's it. Alright, you have to back yourself for it. So which of the statement is correct? D. Neither one nor two. Alright friends, thank you so much. If there are any issues, please connect to us. Easiest method will be comment. If there are any doubt, if there are basically any doubts, write them down in the comment section. We will respond to it. Alright, thank you so much. Meet you soon. Bye.